really kind of amusing when we look at it. Sometimes it comes up with some very interesting statements.
Yeah, I keep it on because sometimes I miss something.
You are now being recorded.
Oh,
You are now
let's
being
see.
recorded.
Let's see if I can put my
All the ratings. Yep. Yep. Yep.
Okay, Ron, try again.
Yep.
Okay, I'm on. All right. Okay, testing, testing. Hello, hello, testing, testing. We might have some feedback issues with the placement of the speakers. We'll have to adjust. Okay, how's this sound? Can anybody not hear well enough? Okay. It's ringing just a little bit. If you can bring it down. And maybe I'll turn this speaker. Yeah, can you rotate that 45? There you go. Okay. All right. Welcome to our forum on church or congregation or whatnot. We start with this sentiment again from the last forum. Everyone is at a different place in their life. The challenge is to meet people where they are and allow them time to process their feelings while keeping the process moving forward respectfully. That's our goal. Please let us know if we are failing in some way. Okay, so the agenda for today is we're going to review the survey results regarding what type of institution we should call ourselves. This is the survey we took at the very beginning of the process before we had had any discussions. We wanted to get your unaffected opinions about things. Then we're going to go into a discussion of the question, should we call ourselves a church, a congregation, a community, a society, or something else? That discussion will go around once so everybody has a chance to speak, and then we'll open it up to responses. And then if time allows, we can begin a discussion about the yous. Okay, so survey results. Does anybody have any comments or questions at this point?
Some people may not know what you mean about the names.
Unitarian, Universalist, both, just the initials, neither, any permutations of the U's. All right, so sometime way last year, we took a big survey. We won't review the whole thing. We're just going to move down to the part about this, and now I'll fit it all on the same screen, hopefully. All right, can you see that? Can I make it a little bigger? Actually, I'll go ahead and chop off the bottom rows.
Better.
Okay, and I think I can go one more. Okay, so I'll scroll up so you can see the instructions, and I'll explain what this means again. Okay. So in the survey, you were asked for this question and the next one to rank each item in order of preference, 1 through 6, and then those ranks get averaged across the community. So the interpretation of this is lower numbers for the average rank means that choice is more popular. And to understand that, if everybody had ranked community as their first choice, the score for community would be 1. 1 is the lowest score that any of these choices can get. So I've listed them here in ascending order. So community 1, basically, and congregation was close behind. And frankly, statistically, these two are the same result. 2.4 and 2.5 are the same. And to see how that happened, I highlighted the boxes that were above 20%. So roughly speaking, almost a third of us ranked community either 1, 2, or 3. And it's something similar for congregation for 1, 2, and 3. And there were very few responses for 5 or 6. So that's how these two ended up right next to each other. For church, a third of us ranked it 1, but it dropped off precipitously after that. So that's why church is 2.9 instead of 2.5. We've stated that the goal of this process is to maximize the satisfaction across the community. We're trying to avoid having a very small number of people very happy and the majority of the people below average happiness. We would like to even that out across the community as best we can. This chart really shows how that would look. And as we design, this isn't the topic of today, but as we design the voting process, we have that keenly in mind because there are voting processes that could absolutely minimize the satisfaction across the community if we're not careful, because we're in a weird election here. We have way more candidates than usual. In fact, we have as many candidates as we have voters, maybe more, which is a very strange situation. So anyway, so just so you understand what our aim is here. So before we had any community discussion, this is what you all thought about what type of institution we should declare ourselves to be. Before we move on to the discussion of the question, does anyone have any questions or comments about these survey results or any memories from that time that they want to bring?
I just think the intentionality of the team that
Do you
you're
want-
gonna. I just wanted to bring forth that the team intentionally wanted to do a survey before we had a conversation. So this is really just from folks who, just out of the blue from their home are responding to a survey. And so I just wanted to pull that out, that was on purpose.
Yeah, and the earlier discussion before this survey taken was back in 2019, when we first started the process in the before times. Okay, so, and we can come back to this. This is not your only chance if you want to come back to look at this again during the discussion.
So this could change.
So these percentages could change. They're not necessarily,
Yeah, they probably will, I would imagine.
probably will. I
Yeah.
just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
Okay. Sorry, bear with me a sec here. Okay, so again, the question to comment on is, should we call ourselves a church, a congregation, a community, a society, or something else? And I'll see. There's a huge delay between what I do and what shows up on the screen, so. Okay. So I think it would probably be best to go geometrically around the first time, and if you don't have any comment, go ahead and pass, and we'll come back.
At some point, once we get used to the question, can we get people back on screen?
Oh, yeah, we can do that now,
Okay.
if everyone's okay with
Maybe
that.
you can just cut and paste it into the chat for the folks online. I don't know, maybe you can. And then if people could just say their names before they talk, that would be helpful too, because we're still all. Thank you.
It's the least I can do. Okay, so now I'll try to get the gallery back up. Oh yeah, I can stop sharing. Is that what you mean?
Nice.
Okay. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Pamela, and I remember taking this survey, and I remember thinking very strongly at the time that I really love the word community. And that is so, that's what I was looking for when I came to and discovered Michael Servetus. So, and I never knew who Michael Servetus was. But I was just struck, again, by how much the community is felt here, regardless of whether we choose to use that word to define us or not. Because as Byron had to keep explaining what we were doing, this community does. This is about we talk about ourselves as a community. We don't say the church. We don't even say congregation. We use the word community a lot. So, just my thoughts.
I'm going to just wait because I'm going to start.
A reminder that people on Zoom cannot hear if the microphone is.
I'm Bruce, he, him, or at times people think he, haw. That's what I think Chris was saying at one time, if he's still here. Chad was saying. I also like the word community. As I drive around the different neighborhoods, I see like the Catholic community of, the Lutheran community of. And I think it's more of an encompassing word. And when I came here, my ex and I were looking for some kind of a, I don't know, we're church at that time, but the more I've been here, the more I've found this to be more of a community than anything else. Supportive, caring, working together. And I think that defines who we are. And if we use a word, we want one that does define who we are. I think a lot of people are looking for a community, a supportive group, a caring group, a group that gives a damn about who we are, who you are, and what we're doing in the world.
I'm Kathy, she, her. For me, the name is more about people who are not here than the people who are. And so what does the name tell people who don't know anything about us? And for me, we are a religious organization, and so society does not appeal to me because that sounds like a secular nonprofit, the Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals, for example. Between congregation and community, again, there are community churches that are Christian churches. They tend to be liberal. If we're going to put Unitarian Universalist in the name, then I'm not sure I care a whole lot between community and congregation. Church has Christian connotations, and so my preference would be to avoid that.
I'm Marie, and I actually like church, even if I agree with what Kathy says and Bruce saying like the Fridley community of Unitarian Universalists. I would like community in that case. But as we're talking, we do talk about community, but I don't say I'm going to community. I say I'm going to church. And I hear people say church a lot. So, and yeah, I know it has that Christian connotation, but I'm still with church as my number one.
And some of us are Christian. My name's Lynn, and I agree with Kathy's view that the most important piece of this is to identify ourselves to the outside world in a way that makes it clear what we are and who we are. So I don't know that I care a lot between community, congregation, church, as long as we're clear that we are a religious organization. I think that part is important, and I think as we will get to later, specifying what kind of religion we are is also really important, because you want people to really feel like they know that this is something they want to explore, and so we need to be clear on who we are.
I'm Jamie, she, her. I prefer church. I like to talk to the newcomers at church and get to know them a little bit, meet new people. And, excuse me. And I often hear that they're looking for a church and that they've gone to other churches. I think, yes, they're looking for community, but that's not all they're looking for. They are looking often for a spiritual connection as well. So I think it's clear what we are if we call ourselves a church. And my husband has the opposite opinion, I will add, since he can't speak for himself today.
Hello, I am Adam. He, him. I really like the community more than the other titles. I mean, when I first heard of this microservice society, it didn't strike out to me as being a UU church right away until I read through the website. And made me think it was something completely different than being UU. Like it was, I don't know, biblical Unitarian, I don't know. Yeah, something like that. Oh. Well, that's all I have to say.
Thanks, Adam. Hi, I'm Kevin, he, him. When I think about the word church and titles, I think back to many of the congregations I've been part of, and churches typically dropped. It's All Souls, St. Stephen's, Holy Rosary, but you don't hear them using the word church as they announce themselves. And I think church can provoke some of those negative elements of religion that we've come to know and still are out there for some. So my preference is community as we refer to ourselves. We go to a church called Michael Servetus Community. So I think the title doesn't need the word church, and yet we'll still employ the word church in reference to where we go at times. So my preference is community.
I'm Richard, and my preference is church. To me, church implies tradition. You kind of know what you expect with that. I could live with congregation, but community and society, you don't know what that is. Sometimes it might be some extreme offbeat organization, but a church is a church. It seeps in tradition. And I don't know if there's Christian connection, and if there is, so be it. I don't think that's all bad. So that's what I feel.
I'm Jan, she, her. My opinion, I think, is very close to what Kathy already said. I like congregation because it implies a religious institution without implying a Christian religious institution. But I think I could also support community.
I'm Lori, she, her. I like the word church because it differs from community in that it implies a spiritual connotation, where community, there's all sorts of different communities. But if you added the additional information of Unitarian Universalist, then I could live with community. So both of those words would work for me.
I'm Sarah. I strongly prefer the word congregation because it has a religious connotation, but it doesn't specify which religion. I think community and society both imply a secular organization, and that's not what we want to say to newcomers.
Hi, I'm Beth. I think for a long time I've been thinking of something that maybe isn't in the running or was never. I don't know. I was thinking of fellowship. It seems like it has a sense of comfort and the common good sort of a thing. But then when I think of fellow, and I think, could we be a little more broad-minded? What would that be? I don't know. But anyway, I guess some of the clarifying things that have been said about if we have community and add more detail in the title, that would be a good choice. I also like what Sarah just said about congregation. That is what we do, coming together to sort things out.
Chris, he, him. First of all, Kathy said everything that I was going to say, so what more can I say? I think my opinion shouldn't count for as much because I think we are wanting to attract new people, and that's what this is really going to do, more so than whether or not I make myself happy. That said, I have a slight preference for congregation for the reasons others have stated. Community strikes me as being a not very religious term, and yet I think we want to portray ourselves as being religious. If we went with community, it would be essential that we include Unitarian Universalist or something along those lines, in effect making it a single phrase. That would at least be acceptable to me. Church, although not totally unacceptable to me, does have the Christian emphasis that I don't think matches us. So I come back to community.
Do you want to use this? Oh, yeah, okay. Oh, that's right. Okay, so what you couldn't hear, because it wasn't on mic, is that we'll go through the Zoom attendees now. I can't see the screen so well because of glare. Let's just go by raising your hand virtually or physically on screen. And Kate, would you be able to call on them? I'll give you this mic since you have a close view of it.
I see Ali has her hand up.
I agree with a lot of what Kathy Burek said. This is not as much for us. There are some of those labels that feel warm and fuzzy to me and make me feel happy about the group that I'm in, but that's not the point of this. It's so that outside people know what we are. When you heard we were coming to the Fridley Community Center, did you think that was a religious building? Community does not sound religious to me, and I think we need to sound religious. So for that reason, I would choose church or congregation, because I think that's the only place that I've heard those two terms used in some sort of religious setting. To me, it makes it very confusing to have society or some of those nondescript labels on there. I have no idea what you are. And I'm glad that somebody will go online to figure out what Michael Servetus is, but I would not do that. And I'm sure I'm not the only one who would say, forget about that. I'm going to look at the next place that says congregation or church. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ellie. Elizabeth?
So I agree with that it's not for me. It's for the outside person. It's for the newcomers. And it's for when we're out in groups representing who we are. We know what we are. We know who we are. I very much like congregation. I'm strong in for community, but I like congregation because it does show the religious aspect of it. I personally don't mind church, but I'm thinking for a younger generation and a lot of marginalized groups, church can seem very Christian or judgy or might make them not feel as interested in coming unless there is the Unitarian Universalist or some form of that put at the front of it so that it kind of denotes who we are in that aspect and might put out a more friendly feel.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Anyone else online? Stephanie?
Hi, I'm Stephanie, she, her. I had to kind of rethink my really strong feelings when I said that I was going to church, and I was like, oh, why did I say that? And then what the others would mean to me. I would vote for congregation simply because if you look at, even if you just look at a definition of it, it has to do with people who are seeking to worship or to have religious education. So it gives people, other people from the outside, an idea of what we're coming together for. Now, if you could say you're going to church, you're going to meeting, you can call that whatever you want, but I think the name we put forward, probably we should say we're more of a religious organization. Community, I could go for that if it was if you have like Unitarian Universalist community, if that's in there, that would be helpful. Church just gives me a bad feeling. If you look up the definition of church, it's primarily Christian. I don't have any problem with Christian, but I think there's a lot of negativity that was done in the name of the Christian church. Specifically, I think the Catholic Church, but also, even after Martin Luther and everybody became a lot of people became Protestants, didn't really repudiate a lot of that stuff, like the doctrine of discovery. It's still in our laws, it's everywhere. So there's a lot of church stuff that, first of all, it's a building. Secondly, it's a hierarchy of rules and regulations, and sometimes you get the feeling that there's some conditions. We love you, but only if you're this way. So I really would not go for church at all. I think I would go for congregation, and then like I said before, community if we really identify Unitarian Universalist.
I see Marilyn Hyatt online. We need to unmute you here, Marilyn. There we go. You should be good now.
Oh, okay, Marilyn, she, her. A lot of things that have been said I agree with, and I was just thinking that when I was looking for a church, I looked for Unitarian Universalists. I didn't look for, the society wasn't that important. It was the Unitarian Universalists. But I have the same feeling about church. It has very negative connotations for me, and the definition says Christian worship, whereas congregation talks about people assembled for worship. So congregation is what I would vote for after Unitarian Universalists. That's it.
Thanks, Marilyn. Do we have anyone else? Oh, look, Pat and Merle. Pat has her hand up.
I know we're not talking about the UUs yet, but I just want to put in a plug for both of them. Right now, we only have Unitarian, and I really, really miss, because I identify more with the universalism, so I'd like to see that. Is regarding the others, my main thing is I just don't like society. I think it's confusing. It was confusing for me. I didn't know anything about UUism, and all I heard was this guy's name and society. So I had to do some digging in order to figure out, is this someplace I wanted to go? And luckily I figured it out that it is.
Merle, she, her. I'm liking congregation a lot as we're talking. I don't like society. I don't like Michael Servetus in terms of attracting people or letting them know who we are. But I do like congregation as I'm hearing people talk about it.
Thanks. I see Anna has her hand up, and then Janice.
Hi, I'm Anna, she, her pronouns. And even when I attended a church, when I attend church, I always think of it as a congregation because that resonates with me versus the word church. I think also growing up in a church that was housed in a synagogue was just felt strange calling it a church. So maybe that's where it came from. I don't know. I think one thing that is maybe beyond the scope of this conversation, but we should keep in mind is how many words the title has, because it's going to be a mouthful having Unitarian Universalist and then something before it and something after it. Our name is already pretty long, which is why we have an acronym that people outside of us don't know. So the number of words we should keep in mind, because it gets really, really long when you have all these terms that are super meaningful, but it's just a lot of letters and a lot of words and a lot of synonyms. Think about the kids who have to say where they go to church, right? Make it easy for them.
Janice.
I was pretty open when starting the conversation and have been. I kind of go back and forth between congregation, community, church, more of a third choice for me. I keep thinking I'll hear somebody speak about community and then I'll really like community. And then I hear somebody speak about congregation and I really like congregation. And then somebody will talk about church, but then they could live with congregation. And I'm kind of keeping an informal poll here because I am, spoiler alert, part of the task force. I think congregation would definitely be my first choice and community would be my second choice. But I think that from what I'm hearing, some of the people that like church could also live with congregation. So congregation might be a good one to consider. That's it.
Thanks, Janice. Other online folks, Lois, have you spoken, or David, or Mary? Lois, you ready? Great.
So I had really been strongly in favor of community, but based on the conversation and hearing others, I agree with a lot of you who are talking about how it's helpful for outside people outside of our community, as it will, to be able to readily identify us as a religious organization. And I personally find church too off-putting, but boy, I can sure live with congregation. To me, it's coming together in support of one another, in caring and love. And yeah, there, in all honesty, there are some roots back there to my New England upbringing. and Congregationalists were big there, although I was not one. But still, congregation, that just feels okay by me. That's it.
Thanks, Lois. Anyone else from the online group? David or Mary? David? Go ahead, David.
Yeah. I don't feel like I have a real strong inclination anyway. I'll say of what I've been listening to, I feel most moved and drawn to the comments in support of congregation. I think I personally could live with any title that we chose. I do think that it is important to think about the people who aren't with us yet. And it does seem to me that congregation strikes a happy medium of communicating religiosity without miscommunicating churchiness in kind of its negative connotations. So.
Thanks, everyone. Mary, do you have anything you want to add? If so, you can unmute. Otherwise, we will move on. We've got a couple people here in the room still. Me and, oh, there's Mary as unmuted. What would you like to say, Mary?
This has just been really interesting to listen to. If I had to pick, congregation feels much better to me than church. And that's all.
All right. Thank you. So I'm here in the room. Should I move somewhere into a camera view? I'm Katie, over at the tech table. I find that I am somewhat ambivalent to that name, and I would happily make the decision after we have, say, the, what are you calling it? The unique name chosen, because I think we could, it might make a difference how many words there are, what it sounds like. And I also find that I am much more interested in the choice or how we choose to depict ourselves in terms of being Unitarian Universalists than I am in terms of the C word. Brian.
I have to do all of this at once here. There I am. Now I got to get this out of my ear too, otherwise I'm hearing myself twice. It seems like congregation is the kind of the compromise, which is not a bad word here. I am struck by how sad it is that the word church has such negative connotations, and even I grew up Catholic, and I kind of still think of church as that place. But it's sad that we can't reclaim that as being a broader term, and that when you hear that word, a lot of people anyway kind of go to that space. So, and start this community was kind of number one in my head, but I definitely agree that it's ambiguous and it doesn't, reflect that we are a religious organization. So in my mind, congregation kind of overlaps both of those in a nice way to kind of let you know we're not a church, but we're religious and we're a community of people. So thanks.
I'm Chad. I don't think it'll come as a great surprise that I prefer church. This is what we do is religious, and church conveys that in a way that I don't think congregation or community does, although I think congregation can do it pretty well. I mean, to echo what Brian said, yes, there are connotations. Great, let's grasp them. I mean, so if we were to pick church, and I understand the reasons that we may not, I think we could really lean into the reason we did that as part of how we market who we are. From a pure naming perspective, so let me go back. Congregation, I certainly can live with. I think it will convey the message that, Kathy started us out with, the importance of this isn't for us at the end of the day anyway. It's what does it tell other people? I think church conveys what we are better than congregation, but congregation's pretty close and would do the trick. My problem goes back to something Anna said. It's not just number of words, it's number of syllables. Congregation doesn't fit in as many names for me very well. So that's a pure marketing, how do we make the name work? And I think maybe all of this changes as we look at what that unique name might be. Maybe we don't need any of it. I mean, we don't need to use this term, although then what do we lose? So I guess I come back, congregation seems to be where things are heading. I think that works as long as we can come up with a name that works. Let's just let people know that we are here. This is a faith, and there is a home for them.
Can you bring me up? Okay, so I'm speaking as a member. I just want to make sure we didn't feedback. So I'm speaking first as just a member of the community, and then I'll speak as a committee member. My other village, other than this one, is the one I work with. Everybody I work with is younger than me. Many of them could be my children. So on the occasion, on the rare occasion when I want to or sort of need to refer to my Sunday morning activities, I really hesitate to mention that did something at church that's relevant or something like that. Because this community that I'm very tight with, their perception of church, unfortunately, is what is in the news right now. And these young people are worried about losing their freedom. So I really, really hesitate to take any risk of associating myself with that. That's more with the people that don't know me that well. I don't want them to think that. That's just a fact. I don't want to be associated with that. I'm not going to comment whether that's good or bad or why or what. But what I'm hearing here is that this name is for the people who aren't here. This name is for the people who are not us. And also, it's for my generation and younger. So these are just the realities that I observe in my little villages. So I'm really worried about church. In terms of while I stay on the topic of church, the response from the Edmonds folks. Yeah, this is part of my comments. So these guys really spoke to me. Alan Christ and Ellen Snow, their response really spoke to me. I can skip a lot of it because the dictionary definitions you've all already elaborated on. But one argument I really like is they say that we aren't considering synagogue, temple, or mosque for our congregation. Why should we have a name that is just as specific to a particular religion as those words are? That argument spoke to me really well. He goes on to say, the word congregation has a religious meaning, but it is neutral as to denomination. Merriam-Webster, Cambridge, and Oxford all define congregation as a group of people assembled for religious worship. Elsewhere in here, elsewhere in this discussion transcript, people brought up the point that what we say about who we are is different and separate from what we publish, what we declare ourselves to be on our website, and so forth. So I agree that the name can get long and it can be a mouthful, but we don't need to use that in our daily discourse. We don't need to trip over a really long name when we refer to ourselves verbally. Okay, and I think that's it. So I'll come back at the end and talk about the process a bit as it affects comments you all have made.
Thanks. My name's Carl. I'm not even yet a formal member of this group, but a name is an incredibly important thing. This is the headline of recruitment for whoever you bring into this group. What it says, when I hear Unitarian Universalist, that sets up a set of expectations for me. If I hear Circle, Grove, Temple, these all set up expectations. Really, the biggest question here is, who are you trying to bring in, and what are this title going to tell them about you? Thanks.
And I'm Laura, she, her. I was going to say what I would love, and the task force is going to recommend this, is to take these words out into the world and talk to people other than us about them. Whether it's a neighbor, whether it's a safe coworker where you feel like, the place I worship is looking at a new name. How does congregation, how does church, how does community, what does that, because we are the people here. And I worry a little bit that we're hair splitting around words that mean something to us, but may mean nothing to other people. So I think it's good for us to really, if we're going to market test it, let's test it. I was sort of laughing a little bit because I feel like at First Universalist, there were some folks who were like, please don't talk about love, because when you talk about love, you mean God. And it just like pissed them off, like you're just using a code word for God. And so I think it was coming to me just because, like, is congregation a code word for church? Because church is sort of like a name that scares some folks here, or they'd prefer not to be affiliated with a church. So I just wonder whether, congregation softens it, and whether we need to soften it, I don't know. I always wanted us to be a community church, and then we get the community and the church. But I do think testing it makes a lot of sense. And the other thing, I guess, is to just think about who our audience is. So if it's the northern suburbs, I mean, I know that when these founders started this society, it was because there was so much religiosity up here, and they wanted to have a place where their kids could say, I go to church, even though it was named a society. So I guess I think the more we could test it, the better, because I know we keep saying, like, I could live with, I could, and is it, once again, just to loop back around, is it about what we can live with, or is it about what we're trying to, what the kind of law of attraction will be? So yeah, I mean, I think that's all I have. Yeah. Byron, back to you. I know I was just going to say, I'm sure people in the circle have other thoughts. Like I think about Pamela, who started with community, and I see her shaking her head at different conversations. So I just want us to also just acknowledge whatever opinions we put in here. These are forever, kind of morphing and changing as we hear one another. I saw Beth's hand up. Do you want to?
Before we go with other comments, I would like to speak to the process, because I heard some concerns about the process. Like, what if what I choose for a C depends on what we choose for a U? That makes a lot of sense to me. So here's what we have just briefly envisioned so far. None of this is committed to yet. The next vote that we take, which will also be our first vote, will have three purposes. It will be to reduce our list of unique names down to a manageable number. It will be to choose the U's and choose the C's. So that first vote will be intended to be binding for the U's and the C's, with this caveat. We're planning to leave flexibility in the process so that if a combination of U's wins, but it doesn't go well with the winner of the C's, we have a discussion about what to do about that, and then we modify the final ballot to reflect that. we're open to learning from this process, because frankly, we're about to take the weirdest vote ever. So we're very conscious that this could go south if we're not careful. So there will be an adjustment process somehow to reconcile U's and C's so they make sense to everybody. Yeah, I guess that's all I need to say before we go on. Hopefully that allays some of the concerns of folks about what ifs. Does anyone on the committee or Laura have anything to add to what I just said? That was fairly extemporaneous. Okay, so should we go, sorry, not go around again, but now it can just be open to whoever has a comment? Okay. Beth, can you pass that to Beth around the front? Thanks. You'll need to turn it on, Beth.
One thing that just came to mind was you talk about the UUs and the Cs. What if there's no C? Like if we would go with Fridley Unitarian Universalists. But then I was thinking, kind of following something Anna said about the length of it and it becoming an acronym, we need to think about the order because we wouldn't want Fridley Unitarian Universalist Congregation.
Thank you for saying it, Beth.
Thank you, Marie. Beth, that was fabulous. Seriously fabulous. I'm wondering, and this is for later thought, if we can sort of to get around the problem that Anna pointed out with how long these names can get, if it's possible to do it sort of in two parts. So, for example, it could be something like North Star Congregation, and then the second line is a Unitarian Universalist community. So we get that information in there, but it's not something that we would say every day is the name of the organization.
The way you said Fridley Unitarian Universalist, and Bruce had said it earlier, you can say Unitarian Universalist, however, Unitarian Universalism of Fridley, and use the of in there. That's one thing. The other thing that the FUUC, I was involved with the youth years ago, and I tell you, First Unitarian Church really got it, and the kids laughed about it at every con. Other than that, listening to everything, I have thought, I think it would still be okay to have church. However, my preference now is congregation.
Is it on? Okay. I like what Byron read, and that's one of the things I was thinking of. Who are we trying to address? Here we are, a bunch of white, middle class, over the age of, and not that many are that young. And we're coming up with what we're familiar with. And I think we need to redirect who we want to address and how we want them to understand it. We may have people from, like Byron was saying, from that reading, that come from Asia, that come from the Mediterranean, that come from Africa, that come from all over. How do we address it so they understand who we are and make them comfortable? And the other thing is, why are so many churches then putting in the word community? Why do I see that on so many signs of churches? There's a reason why they are getting away from some of their signature descriptions. And I want us to think about that. Why are so many churches now the church, the community of? They're realizing something. They've learned something that I think we need to look at. Thank you.
Anna online had her hand up.
Thanks, Byron. Just a correction. My name is pronounced Anna, not Anna. It's all good, but keep reminding folks. Also, I think, well, as a teen, I grew up at First Universalist Church, and I really enjoyed identifying with their acronym. I was one who laughed at the cons that Marie mentioned. But I think also we should, in terms of identification, unique identification, FUUC is very similar to FUC. So if we don't want to get mixed up with another church in the area or another congregation, another church, another community in the area, we should keep that in mind as well. And I had one final point I meant to make earlier. When I was searching for a congregation after moving back to Minnesota, I pulled up the old Google, and I knew to search Unitarian Universalists and all its configurations. But that's because I had grown up and that's what I was looking for. So I think that's something to consider, whether it's in the name or some additions on the website, some tags on the website. We should keep that in mind, that if you don't know to look for Unitarian Universalists or you don't know to look for keywords, how do you make it findable?
I would like to add to what Anna just said. I don't need the mic. I've got one on the head. I would like to point out that the biggest market out there are people who aren't UUs already. That's the vast majority of humanity outside of us. So I'd like us to keep in mind, so we would have Unitarian Universalists or some sort of identification to that, but enough else in our name so that if they're not UUs, they go find out what it is. Or at least they're not put off to going to find out what it is. I see our market as people my age or younger who don't know what UUs are. And like most people say, if you ask most people, if you could get in their heads and find out what they actually believe, they're UUs, they just don't know it. Okay, that's the end.
I want to just add around location, just because we have White Bear UU, which is in Montemedi, and we have, what's the other one? The one in Bloomington? No, that's not the one. Oh, Minnetonka, which is actually in Wayzata. So I think if we designate, we need to designate big enough that we can be in any number of communities around here, just out of caution, because it's so frustrating to be in a church that identifies itself with a town that it's actually not in. The only other thing, I just think this Google search thing is interesting, and it might be worth us entertaining that too. I honestly don't think when Lynn and I moved here, we would have had the wherewithal to think of, should I search a congregation? It just never, that word wasn't in my, vocabulary. So I just don't know. I don't know if you Google congregation, does it pop up all the churches or not? I have no idea, or mosque or whatever, so.
Yeah, the word congregation shows up in the names of a lot of Jewish organizations. And so it has a broader connection than Christianity. The fact that we meet on a Sunday morning, and if we were to call ourselves a church, we really tie ourselves into a perception of this being a Christian church as opposed to a church where Christians and others and various beliefs are welcome. And particularly, it occurs to me that a lot of our future market might well be people coming out of Islam who are rebelling against the strictures, particularly women, particularly gay people, who are going to be looking for a religious home. And if you say, well, we meet on Sunday morning and we're a church, they're going to think of it as being too connected to Christianity. And so I think we need to really think about the demographics. Let's look at Southern Anoka County and see what the demographic makeup is and try to figure out, where are people going to be coming from?
Did you say Merle? Merle had her hand up. Merle, are you there?
Merle, she, her. I just Googled, and I live in New Brighton. Church near me. I've got North Lakes Christian Church, the Sanctuary Church, North Church, Hope Church, White Bear Lake churches, Catholic churches, Redeemer churches. So church is not bringing up Unitarian Universalist in any case. Just a thought.
I just want to pay attention to time.
Yep, we're at 12:45, so. All right, thank you, everyone, for your comments. We will study them and we'll excerpt them and present a summary in a coming Thursday update.
We can make this recording available to folks as well.
True.
Yeah.
And thank you, task force.
Yes. There's always tech team.
What?
Do you have any proposed schedule for what's next or not yet?
Yes, we do. Well, it's a loose schedule. Maybe I'll just cover it verbally since we're short on time. Okay, so our hopes and dreams for the future are to hold another forum to talk about the U's and our unique names as our next step after this. And then after that, we'll develop a detailed voting process. And we'll hold an educational Zoom meeting regarding that voting process to educate people on star voting and why and all that good stuff. So those are our next big steps.
Can you just define unique name, because people may not know what that means?
Yeah, so right now in our current model, Michael Servetus is our unique name. Unitarian is our current choice for some combination of U's, and society is our C, even though it's a ways in.
Thank you.
All right. Oh, this just in?
Is it on?
Yep.
Okay. It seems like the momentum is starting. I am wondering when we can be talking about the UUs or U's. Like have another forum, but not wait for a whole nother month. So let's think about that. And how would people feel about having something sooner?
Yeah.
I do think, if I recall correctly from the survey results, there was a really serious nod to the Unitarian Universalist
Yeah, should we look at that?
out of the
real-
use, just where in other places it was less prevalent. So I don't know even really like how, I mean, it doesn't mean we shouldn't have the conversation, but I just think there's more clarity around that perhaps than around the C question or the unique name question.
Yeah, and I think our idea was to combine that with a discussion of the unique names. I can share real quick the survey results, if I can. See what you guys see. Well, that's interesting. All right, well, I don't know why that's small, and I'm not going to take the time to fix it right now. But, yeah, you can see that Unitarian Universalist, both spelled out, is clearly ahead of all other choices. And this is partly why I pointed out that even if we end up with a public-facing name that's a mouthful, that doesn't mean we have to use it in our daily discourse. That point was made by several folks at Edmonds in their discussions. How many of you folks read the transcript from Edmonds? Okay, you all get an A. Cool. Okay, let's end here so we can put all the equipment away, but thank you for showing up.
Thank you.
Lovely
You're welcome.
conversation, everybody. Yeah.
You're welcome.
Saying on the farm, we're wrapping ourselves